Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first episode of the Obsessive Sports Podcast. Glad you could join us. I'm Justin Stewart. I'm joined alongside Colton DeBias and Evan Laurent. Gentlemen, how you doing today?
Pretty good. Enjoying this lovely Pittsburgh winter weather that we're having in the middle of March, end of March. So, yeah, it's good to be here. Good to have our first episode, and I'm excited to dive right into our sports news. But Colton, now what? How have you been?
Evan, don't you just love how 5 days until April and we still have to deal with some snow? I went to the gym this morning and then I came out and there was this white stuff coming in and I was like, oh, I was hoping that all this would be done by now. But nope, Evan, you're right. It's Pittsburgh weather. Other than that, I'm doing really well and I cannot wait to get this first episode up and rolling with you two.
No, for sure, for sure. And I just want to make a note. You can listen to us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, maybe even YouTube too. We'll see how that plans out. But yeah, I just want to do like a around the horn kind of conversation. Colton or Evan, you guys can get started if you want, but any sports topic recently that has your interest that you want to talk about first?
I got one, Evan, if you didn't have anything. And I think it relates to something that the three of us could, I think, talk about in depth. It's about the Steelers and in my opinion, the overrated departure of Juju Smith-Schuster.
Oh,
We want to get started with that.
yeah, we can talk about that.
Local news and big, actually. I mean, local news and around the league because it is a big signing for the Chiefs. Considering we'll get to this later, what happened shortly after he was signed, but yeah, he wasn't on our play for us. How many games last year? He was only in
4, including the playoff game, I believe, because he was injured in the game against Denver.
Yeah, you got hurt.
Which was, I think, the 5th game of the season. So he played the first 4 and then the playoff game. So I think 5 total. So it wasn't surprising because it was one of those instances where we didn't hear much of what was going on with any new restructuring, re-signing. To me, at least, it was silent transaction almost, like before, or silent news beforehand. Behind the scenes type of transaction. But then once it hit, it wasn't much of a surprise considering the last year. Was there some text from Andy Reid to Juju last offseason trying to recruit him to the Chiefs?
Well, Juju claimed that he turned down offers from the Chiefs and the Ravens to come back to the Steelers. Now, I'm not sure if that was ever noted as being true. I mean, I'm not trying to ruin Juju's credibility because maybe it was, but it was time for the Steelers to move on from Juju. I said that last year and I said it this year. Justin, I don't know if you have different opinions, my friend, but it's just the off-field stuff with the TikToking and just the stuff on social media. It just got to the point where I just got too tired of it. Like with the dancing on logos and him trying to brand himself. And I just felt he was a good player. Like, don't get me wrong, especially during the 2018 season when everyone just double teamed AB and Juju took full advantage of it. But I do feel
and
that
even his rookie season.
He did have
rookie
a good
season
rookie
more
season.
so with Martavis Bryant too. He had 2017 we had Brown and Bryant alongside Juju, which I think really helped his breakout rookie year.
Yeah, I mean,
And then
go ahead.
oh, sorry, Justin. Yeah, it's just I hate how he went out though because I don't want to see anybody get injured like that. But I just feel like at the end of the day, I just think the Steelers made the right decision to move on from Juju.
I mean, considering the price he was going for, we can debate whether they should have brought him back or not. But the reality is, Juju did have a year in which he was top 5 in receiving yards, and we can argue till we're blue in the head about, oh, well, AB was getting double teamed all the time. But Juju is a talented receiver. Is he like a top tier receiver? Probably not, as we've learned the past couple of years. But yeah, I think you also have to consider the way in which the Steelers were using him. They had him as the guy. He was did all the dirty work, whether that be blocking, get you a third and short. I mean, Ben never threw deep to him. And when you compare his first 2-3 years in the league, Ben was throwing the home run ball to him. And obviously Ben was a better player 3 years ago, not debating that. But yeah, I mean, Juju last year wasn't getting used much. It was pretty much Deontay Johnson getting all the targets. And yeah, I mean, I just thought his time here ran its course. He needs to show that he still has some juice left in the tank and that he's not just some has-been that had one good year. So, I think he'll thrive in Kansas City because he actually has a elite quarterback in the throw to him. And right now, you touched on it earlier, Evan. Kansas City made some moves, and right now Juju is in a position where he can be a number one receiver again. And
especially with Hill, going to Miami.
Yeah, and we can talk about the TikTok stuff, and obviously, I'm not a big fan of TikTok, and I think some of the celebrations, the dancing on the logo stuff was kind of probably not necessary. But I mean, if you take his social media presence, obsession, whatever you want to call it, out of the equation, he was a pretty solid guy for the most part. Did a lot for the community of Pittsburgh, going to proms with kids, showing up at weddings, doing stuff for the community. So I don't know. I'm gonna miss him. I'm not gonna lie about it.
And also with Kansas City, it's not like Hill was their only. Now that Hill's gone, Juju's like gonna be double covered. They still have Kels too. Kelsey, however, he said he pronounces it at the end of the year. At the end of the NFL season. But either way, I think he'll still be able to get open. It won't be the same as much as apparent as it was in Pittsburgh. What was that? 2019, the year that Brown left. How he became our number one receiver, and more so teams started to and focus their attention on defenses, focus their attention on him, on our offense.
And the thing that did it with me is you have to go back to that Saints game in 2018. And also, you can also make the argument
there was a Ravens
that
game too in
fumbled,
2019.
and he fumbled 2 playoff years away because the Saints game, and then the Ravens game, I think it's more up to debate because that was in overtime. Steelers had the ball, and then Juju fumbled, and then the Ravens went down the field and Tucker kicked the field goal. But that kind of ruined the Steelers' momentum during that, I guess, that season that everyone wishes to forget, that 2019 season when Ben was injured. But but at the end of the day, the Steelers were making a playoff run, and maybe if Juju doesn't fumble that ball, maybe it changes everything.
Listen,
that was a big gain too. That play, I remember, it was a big, would have been a first down, I think, for sure, and it was close to midfield, I think.
Yeah, it was. It was around. I think the Steelers were driving in their own end. I think it was at like the 40-yard line.
Yeah, they were about to be in field goal range, but you mentioned that, so I have a couple problems with that statement. So first of all, it was only one game, and I know the NFL, one game is very important. Don't get me wrong on that, but the Steelers, if I recall from that point, that New Orleans game, I think they lost like 2 or 3 in a row. And the ways in which they were losing were pretty comical. And it really, Juju, outside of that one play, he, I can't recall a single mistake he made in that entire season that was glaringly obvious. With that being said, Ben, you about to say something, Evan?
I was just going to add on to that. Yeah, that year, that 2018 season, I remember we were swept by the AFC West and Denver, and right before then, Denver, Chargers, and
Chiefs,
the Raiders.
Yeah, Chiefs and Raiders. Yeah,
Chiefs was earlier in the year too, but those 3 were like back to back games that were teams. Chargers were better that year, but the Raiders were like,
they were terrible.
Yeah, they were terrible, and that was a silly way. That one was on Boswell because he slipped on that field goal.
That's another thing. Boswell did not have a good year that year either. So, there's a couple culprits too. And even Ben, I think Ben threw for like 5,000 yards, but his interception rate was high. And the ones he always threw came at the worst times possible. I think that's another thing to add to.
You mentioned, Justin, Denver. that year.
Yeah, Denver game. Yeah.
Ben threw a pick in the end zone, and Denver won the game.
So,
and you can even look back to the week 1 tie that year.
Oh, that too.
Against Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland. I think Cleveland had a decent year. Well, by their standards, it was a decent year. But yeah, that's the game they definitely should have won too. There's no excuse.
They were one.
Browns.
The Browns were 1 win away from having a 500 season.
Yeah,
that would have been their first 500 season. I think having at least a winning record in 11 years.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. So
they went through. That was the season they went through 2. Yeah, Hugh Jackson. That was his last run in.
Yeah, Cleveland.
Yeah. Hugh Jackson's last game as the Browns head coach was against the Steelers. Steelers won in a blowout at Heinz.
Yeah.
And Todd Haley's.
Oh, Todd! I forgot Todd Haley was on Cleveland's coaching staff.
Yeah, that's right. For that very short time, and it was well documented because the Browns were on Hard Knocks that year.
Yeah. Side note about Todd Haley. I know when he was an OC here in Pittsburgh, we talked about him and the relationship between him and Ben. And, we talk about how he wasn't that great of a coordinator. Well, compared to what we've had the past few years with Randy Fichtner and Matt Canada, I would take Todd Haley back in a heartbeat. I'm not sure about you guys, but that's just me.
I agree. Will
Justin, you guys agree. I disagree on that.
I agree, but the thing is, it's a shame that their personalities clashed. Because Ben, it was like the 2014, 15, 17, I think, seasons. They put up incredible
numbers together.
So many years stretch, especially with, Brown. Antonio Brown helped a lot, but there was a stretch. It was like 2014 was the year he had those back-to-back 6. Ben had those back-to-back 6 touchdown games.
Mm-hmm.
His up until near the end of Todd Haley's run in Pittsburgh, I think he probably was the best offensive coordinator Ben had. But again, it's a shame that I think at one point there was visible like tension on the sidelines between the two. We got him in 2012, I think.
He took over for Arians.
Yeah, Arians went to Indianapolis to help Luck. And I think it was 2012. He was hired here, which at first, this is why I do have hope for Canada, because first Haley's offense wasn't that. If I remember correctly, this is going back 8 years. Wasn't when he first got here. It took a while to get clicking.
The thing I didn't like about Haley was he relied on the deep ball too much, and the stuff about he got into a fight at Tequila Cowboy and all this stuff, and it's just I always want if somebody does that for the Steelers, you got to weave him out. And during that embarrassing loss to Jacksonville in that playoff game, I was at that game, and I remember saying it's time for the Steelers to move on from Haley. How he was able to get the most out of them. But the problem with Haley was he just wasn't able to execute in the big moments, and that was the same thing with Fichtner.
I don't blame Haley as much as others do for the Jacksonville game, because they did put up 40-something points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we finish what you were about to say. I don't want to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, just it was a really brief after that. Just saying that I remember the defense played absolutely horrible. The first.
It was 21-0.
Very similar to the Cleveland game. The Cleveland playoff game from the 2020 season.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point there. So the Steelers really haven't gone far in the playoffs, with the exception of that 2016 season. In all of their losses, you can at some point pinpoint the defense as being one of the main culprits to why they lost. Cleveland last year, they gave him 28 points in the first quarter, and that was pretty much all she wrote. And then the Jacksonville game, I think another thing that people forget is that Ryan Shazier, unfortunately got hurt, and his career was over after that. But yeah, Ryan Shazier helped cover a lot of the defense's warts, because their defense was not very good that year. It was pretty much the offense shouldering the load, which the irony compared to this past season, it was the defense shouldering the load, specifically TJ Watt. But yeah, going back to the 2017 season, yeah, their defense just wasn't very good. And you saw in that Jacksonville game, it reared its ugly head because Shazier wasn't there. And pretty much Jacksonville, Blake Bortles, Leonard Fournette, whatever they wanted, they pretty much got.
That game was also the last straw for me with Le'Veon Bell. And it almost got to the point with AB too, but that game, because Le'Veon tweeted like before the game, like, "Oh, we're gonna get this quick dub," and all this stuff. He was cocky. He was late. I'm pretty sure like he was late to the game.
Wasn't it Mike Mitchell? Didn't he do something on the? Didn't he go over to the Jaguars locker room or something beforehand and started like screaming from?
I don't remember that.
I have never heard of that story. Yeah, but that's another one. And you know what?
Type of distraction beforehand.
I think it's funny, guys, how we're talking about the Steelers in the past because it goes back to like Juju's rookie year and then with Ben gone. And now it's going to be a whole new Steelers this year. I mean, offensively, yes. I guess defensively, not so much. But you know, I think eventually another topic that we should get into is which is something that has been talked nonstop here in the Pittsburgh media ever since January, is the quarterback situation. And I think now with Trubisky gone, there's no need to talk about it anymore. Don't worry about getting Willis. And as much as the Pitt fan in me wants to say go out and get Kenny Pickett, there's no need to now. You got Trubisky, you got Rudolph. Stick with those guys. And I'm not sure how you guys feel about who the Steelers should pick in the first round. But I still say O-line or D-lineman. I know now you can make the argument for probably receiver, but I think I'm going to stick with O-lineman. I'm curious to see what you guys think about that.
Yeah, so the Steelers for the draft, I have no idea when they're going to go. Personally, for me, my number one guy is Jordan Davis, and after that, I want Tyler Lindenbaum, the center out of Iowa. I think he's very good, and you know, I wish they would have got Creed Humphrey last year because he graded by Pro Football Focus as the best center in the NFL last year, and he was a rookie. So they missed the ball on that one last year. But that's besides the point. So focusing on the draft this year. Yeah, I wasn't on that Pickett bandwagon. I think that was more so fueled by the hometown kid, played for Pitt. He's a good quarterback. I think he'll be good in the NFL too, but I don't think he's gonna be a superstar. I actually like Malik Willis a lot. I think for some crazy reason, I think he's gonna go top 10. Someone's gonna overdraft for a quarterback because all these teams always do. They're always desperate. But I think if Malik Willis falls to 20, I would actually consider taking him. Because, like you said, you mentioned it. Trubisky signed for 2 years. So Willis doesn't have to start right away. You know, have him sit 2 years. And then, you go to him. I think the more optimal thing to do is to just, like you said, start Trubisky. You know, have him and Rudolph battle it out. Although I think Trubisky's the better quarterback. Have them battle it out. Look at your quarterback next year. And you have him sit a year. And then, you do your thing. But yeah, defensively, I think the Steelers are pretty good. Obviously, cornerback probably should be a focus, and their interior defensive line as well. Cam Hayward's getting older. You don't know about Stephon Tuitt, his health, his mindset. So that's why I was talking about Jordan Davis from Georgia. I like him a lot. He's a beast. I don't know if you saw his 40-yard dash, but that's what I think. What about you, Evan?
What do I think for the first round? Season or throughout the majority of our 2021 season, I was thinking that we need to upgrade at offensive line, and I think I'm going to stick with that. I think that quarterback comes later, especially since we did pick up Trubisky. We should just see what he has to offer. One of those situations where like Tennessee, how they don't have to have the best quarterback. They built the offense around the run. Maybe we might take a similar approach, at least for this next season or two, and just see if Trubisky has anything, because part of his, the criticisms could also be put on the Bears in his development, his constant. I didn't pay attention to the Bears much, but one thing was apparent was that they rotated through quarterbacks while he he was there, and it just seemed like that hurt his development
Isn't it funny though how
with
people
offensive
forget?
line.
Isn't it funny how people forget though? He actually led the Bears to 2 playoff appearances,
Yeah.
and one of those was a wild card berth in Chicago. So like it's kind of funny. I remember when Trubisky got drafted by the Bears. I was watching the draft with a friend, and I remember he was so mad that the Bears got Trubisky because he thought he was drafted way too high. And I guess thinking back on it, it's like, what did Trubisky do in college? He went to UNC. I think he actually led UNC to the ACC championship game one year. But other than that, it's like, what did he do? I just didn't see anything special in Trubisky when he got out of college. But I think it kind of worked out for the Bears in a way, even though it was time to move on from him.
Yeah, I would say so. Well, listen, I think Trubisky, he's gotten a lot of hate. It's not his fault. He got drafted by the Bears, and we all know the Bears. They're not the best with getting quarterbacks. They really haven't had a great quarterback. Really, I can't even tell you when. Honestly, I mean they had Jay Cutler.
It's kind of. I looked at the statistic. Statistically, I think he is their best quarterback, which says something.
Yeah, I mean
Cutler?
Jay Cutler. Oh gosh, Jay Cutler had talent. He just never seemed to put it all together.
He was a quitter. Cutler was a quitter.
Yeah, we can call him a quitter.
That was the problem.
Yeah. But Trubisky, it wasn't his fault that he got drafted number 2 overall. But he has skill. It's not like he's like an absolute bum. And like you said, he did get to the playoffs twice. So it's in 4 years. So it's not like he's been an abject failure. So with Trubisky, I think the Steelers talked about, Coach Tomlin the past season talked about getting a quarterback that's mobile. Well, Trubisky is pretty mobile for a guy's size. And he actually has a good arm too. Now, whether or not it's always accurate, we can debate that until we're blue in the face. But I like Trubisky's skill set, and who knows? Maybe if he shows us something that catches all of us off guard, maybe he'll be their long-term answer at quarterback. I don't know about that, but yeah, man, you never know. I thought with the Titans with Ryan Tannehill, I thought, man, they bench Mariota, they start Ryan Tannehill, and next they're in the AFC Championship game. And they become a viable playoff team. So my point with that was sometimes change is necessary for some guys to flourish. It's just part of being an athlete, situations, I guess.
Because it was looking like, at that point in Tannehill's career, it was looking like he hit a wall, or with Miami, I think he only had one season where he technically led them to the playoffs, where the Steelers played them the first wild card game, but I
was at that game
of the season.
Yeah,
Matt Moore.
Matt Moore. Yeah,
started. Yeah, Matt Moore he started like the last 5-6 games, something like that.
Yeah, no, it was a handful of games. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a you never know what career just will be like rejuvenated on a new system, a new team. Maybe the Bears and him just did not click.
Yeah, that's quite the understatement. I want to move past the Trubisky talk because I think we've talked about a lot. Is there anything else you guys have in mind as far as anything Steelers related that you want to bring up? Maybe some of their free agent signings, just what your outlook on the team this season? Anything?
I guess the only thing that I would go ahead, Evan.
Really quick point is that I like the fact that it isn't like years prior where kind of wait to see what happens in free agency. It seems like as soon as free agency started, they were moves. We were making moves.
And that's something that the Steelers have not done, especially in the Colbert era.
Yeah, no, it helps.
His final little send off,
because
it's apparent that Colbert's going to be done after this offseason. So maybe he's making one final push and one final mark on the Steelers franchise.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess speaking of the general manager situation, I don't know if this is true or not. This is just in my mind. So Louis Riddick, who's the Monday Night Football analyst for ESPN, he interviewed for the GM position,
He's
So
former now, bro. He's former.
he went to Pitt because he went to Pitt in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I remember, and he posted a picture on his Instagram walking past the Cathedral of Learning. And he said that, like, this is my past, my present, and maybe my future. So I'm curious to see if Reddick's still in the hunt to be the next GM.
No, I want to see that. I think Riddick, I think he has a good eye for talent. I think he'd be a solid GM. But we all know the Steelers do business, especially when it comes to coaching in the front office. They're more so homegrown guys that have been in other positions on the team. But once
Hire from
guys
within.
retire or they move on, they move those guys up, as we've seen with Matt Canada and Randy Fichtner. But yeah, I mean Riddick, I wouldn't mind if they hired him, but I think that they're going to go the Omar Khan route and have him be their new GM. And one more side note about free agency. It helps when your quarterback isn't making $40 million a year. So you actually have cap room to actually sign guys and improve your team. So that's another note. That's for all the quarterbacks now that are getting $50 million a year. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Deshaun Watson.
Or even the whole, could you bring this up with like the Devontae Adams situation too? With like he got way more money in Las Vegas than Green Bay because they just paid.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, $50 million. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So
it just begs the question too, like what is the cost of paying one player so much? And again, Rodgers has been incredible, like statistically. Again, everything that he's put them through this whole year or two. I don't know. Just someone like that is. Rodgers pulled that type of stuff on your team. I don't know if you'd want him back. Like, I know he's a phenomenal player, but all that he put them through, like this whole, it just seemed like there's so much drama behind the scenes. And not even behind the scenes, like he's projecting it onto like on social media. He's leaving subliminal hints. And I don't know. I just want to hear your thoughts on something like that.
I think people would say that the biggest ego in NFL history was Antonio Brown. Nope. That title belongs to Aaron Rodgers. I'm not a fan of Rodgers as a player. First off, I think with the skill and the talent that he has, he is extremely overrated. He had the potential to possibly build a dynasty for the Packers, and instead he only comes up with one Lombardi trophy, and he can thank Rashad Mendenhall for that. He is so overrated with the skill that he has and all the playoff chokes that he has done. And you're right, Evan, with all that off the field stuff, with his not refusing just to get a simple vaccine like millions of other Americans have gotten. It was all that. People were saying that, hey, the Steelers should get Aaron Rodgers. People say, no, I do not want him on my team. And I am so happy that talk died down because it wasn't even going to happen anyway. And if the Steelers were considering it, that would have been a bad move on them, in my opinion.
yeah, Aaron
The Steelers
Rodgers,
took.
What's good?
If the Steelers took Rodgers, I just think that'd be a big gamble. Considering he's only a year younger than Ben, you have to hope we turn things around quick. Money on someone who's going to be around for 2 more seasons, maybe, or 3. I mean, it's not like Rodgers isn't. He's also injury prone too. I think the last year, was he?
I know
it seems like each year he's injured.
He had to sit out, I think, like most of the 2017 season, I think, because he was injured.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, I know certain people, not every Steeler fan, but they wanted to trade for him. And, that's going to cost you multiple first-round picks. And for a team of the Steelers, they still have some holes, but their holes aren't as to be. They need to, add to the team. And, trading for Aaron Rodgers It does the exact opposite. You're almost, in a sense, detracting from your team. And yeah, like you said, he has his whole set of drama issues himself. And honestly, the Steelers have already been in the news enough for drama, whether it be Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell, like those kind of guys. So yeah, just you add Aaron Rodgers, and that's no, I don't want that. You know, you have a bunch of young guys, and yeah, I don't want the locker room to become cancerous. And I know Mike Tomlin's pretty good with the locker room for the most part, but that's just me. That's just me.
And after all of this, what happened? He goes right back to Green Bay. Like, I don't know. It just seemed like a big act or a big, just attention-seeking campaign.
That's exactly what it was. He's an attention getter. He likes attention.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. So
I was just going to add also something else that popped up a few days ago was the whole Matt Ryan in Indianapolis, another quarterback moving, a veteran quarterback moving to a new home. Just I don't know your thoughts on that, and then how that impacts what Atlanta needs. I know they got Mariota, but
the Falcons are going to be in the quarterback hunt now in the draft. You know, and isn't it a coincidence, guys, about how so many teams that need quarterbacks just went out in free agency? I think that's saying something about this quarterback class. I don't think a lot of teams are too high on this class. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and that's why I'm not too crazy. Yeah, I'm just sorry to cut you off, but I'm not crazy about the Steelers getting a quarterback because I don't want them to just think, oh, let's get the best out of a class that isn't that good.
Yeah, and just kind of just to bring this first episode to a close, but with the quarterbacks in this year's draft class, yeah, they're not like eye popping. You don't have that Trevor Lawrence, you know, your Justin Fields, that kind of quarterback that people really like a lot. And yeah, I feel like the Steelers, that's another thing. Don't just draft a quarterback because you need one. That's like the wrong way to go about things. And, you know, if you misfire on one, that sets your franchise back 4 or 5 years. And honestly, the Steelers cannot afford for that to happen, considering the stacked AFC with all the quarterbacks, especially recent transactions in the AFC West. But yeah, I think we're going to cut the episode here because I have to pay extra if we go like longer than like another 2 minutes. But I thank you guys for this first episode. It was a lot of fun talking football. We talked a lot of Steelers, of course. But yeah, as I said earlier in the show, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, probably YouTube as well as we get all this underway. Any last thoughts, guys?
Something to add is that with the draft coming up, I know someone mentioned that maybe a receiver first round, but the one area, if I could say any area on the Steelers that I'm confident to find someone to step up is receiver. Like that's something we have a great track record in is drafting receivers and finding, big playmakers at the receiver position.
And
so
I'm not
if they
worried.
go third round, second, later round, or whenever, that's something I'm not as concerned about. But go ahead, Colton.
Evan, I'm not worried about the Steelers getting a receiver in the first round because you're right because the Steelers have done a terrific job getting receivers in the later rounds. But I say don't even think about getting a quarterback in the later rounds. Stick with Trubisky, stick with Rudolph because even if you try to get a quarterback in the later rounds, it's not going to help you win during the 2022 season because Justin, you mentioned it, the AFC North is stacked this year.